Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 777th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the old queen heard the handmaid's words, she was wroth with sore wrath because of her, and cried, How shall there be accord between man and jinn? But Sayf Al-Muluk replied, Indeed, I will conform to thee thy will, and be thy page, and die in thy love, and will keep with thee covenant, and regard none but thee. So right soon shalt thou see my truth, and lack of falsehood, and the excellence of my manly dealing with thee, Inshallah. The old woman pondered for a full hour, with brow earthwards bent, after which she raised her head and said to him, O thou beautiful youth, wilt thou indeed keep compact and covenant? He replied, Yes, by him who raised the heavens and to spread the earth upon the waters, I will indeed keep faith and troth. Thereupon quoth she, I will win for thee thy wish, Inshallah. But for the present, go thou into the garden, and take thy pleasure therein, and eat of its fruits that have neither like in the world nor equal, whilst I send for my son Shayal, and confabulate with him of the matter. Nothing but good shall come of it, so Allah please, for he will not gainsay me, nor disobey my commandment, and I will marry thee with his daughter, Badi'a Al-Jamal. So be of good heart, for she shall assuredly be thy wife, O Sayf Al-Muluk. The prince thanked her for those words, and kissing her hands and feet, went forth from her into the garden, whilst she turned to Marjana and said to her, Go seek my son, Shayal, wherever he is, and bring him to me. So Marjana went out in quest of King Shayal, and found him, and set him before his mother. On such wise fared it with them. But as regards Sayf Al-Muluk, whilst he walked in the garden, lo and behold, 5 jinn of the people of the Blue King espied him, and said one to the other, Whence cometh yonder wight, and who brought him hither? Happily 'tis he who slew the son and heir of our lord and master the Blue King. Presently adding, But we will go about with him, and question him, and find out all from him. So they walked gently and softly up to him, as he sat in the corner of the garden, and sitting down by him, said to him, O beautiful youth, thou didst right well in slaying the son of the Blue King, and delivering from him Dalat Khatan. For he was a treacherous hound, and had tricked her, and had not Allah appointed thee to her, she had never won free. No, never. But how didst thou slay him? Sayf Al-Muluk looked at them, and deeming them of the garden folk, answered, I slew him by means of this ring, which is on my finger. Therewith they were assured that it was he who had slain them. So they seized him, 2 of them, holding his hands, whilst other 2 held his feet, and the 5th his mouth, lest he should cry out, and King Shayla's people should hear him, and rescue him from their hands. They then lifted him up, and flying away with him, ceased not their flight till they came to their king, and set him down before them, saying, O king of the age, we bring the murderer of thy son. Where is he? Asked the king, and they answered, This is he. So the Blue King said to Sayf Al-Muluk, How slewest thou my son, the core of my heart, and the light of my sight, without aught of right, for all he had done thee no ill deed? Quoth the prince, Yea, verily, I slew him because of his violence and frowardness, in that he used to seize kings' daughters, and sever them from their families, and carry them to the ruined well and the high-builded castle of Japhet, son of Noah, and entreat them lewdly by debauching them. I slew him by means of this ring on my finger, and Allah hurried his soul to the fire and the abiding place dire. Therewithal the king was assured that this was indeed he who slew his son. So presently he called his wazirs, and said to them, This is the murderer of my son, sans shadow of doubt. So how do you counsel me to deal with him? Shall I slay him with the foulest slaughter, or torture him with the terriblest torments, or how? Quoth the chief minister, Cut off his limbs, 1 at a time. Another said, Beat him with a grievous beating every day till he die. A third said, Cut him across the middle. A fourth, Chop off all his fingers and burn him with fire. A fifth said, Crucify him, and so on, speaking according to his rede. Now there was with the Blue King an old emir, versed in the vicissitudes and experienced in the exchanges of the time, and he said, O king of the age, verily I would say to thee somewhat and thine in this rede, whether thou wilt hearken or not, I have no say. Now he was the king's privy councillor, and the chief officer of his empire, and the sovereign was wont to give ear to his word, and conduct himself by the council, and gainsay him not in aught. So he rose, and kissing ground before his liege lord, said to him, O king of the age, if I advise thee in this matter, wilt thou follow my advice, and grant me indemnity? Quoth the king, Set forth thine opinion, and thou shalt have immunity. Then quoth he, O king of the age, an thou slay this one, nor accept my advice, nor hearken to my word in very sooth, I say that his death were now inexpedient, for that he is thy prisoner, and in thy power and under thy protection. So when as thou wilt, thou mayest lay hand on him, and do with him what thou desirest. Have patience then, O king of the age, for he hath entered the garden of Iram, and is become the betrothed of Badi'a Al-Jamal, daughter of King Shayal, and one of them. Thy people seized him there, and brought him hither, and he did not hide his case from them, or from thee. So an thou slay him, assuredly King Shayal will seek blood revenge, and lead his host against thee for his daughter's sake, and thou canst not cope with him, nor make head against his power. So the king hearkened to his counsel, and commanded to imprison the captive. Thus fared it with Sayf Al-Muluk. But as regards the old queen, grandmother of Badia Al-Jamal, when her son Shayal came to her, and dispatched Marjana in search of Sayf Al-Muluk, but she found him not, and returning to her mistress said, I found him not in the garden. So the ancient dame sent for the gardeners, and questioned them of the prince. Quoth they, We saw him sitting under the tree, when behold, 5 of the Blue King's folk alighted by him, and spoke with him, after which they took him up, and having gagged him, flew away with him. When the old queen heard the damsel's words, it was no light matter to her, and she was wroth with exceeding wrath. So she rose to her feet, and said to her son, King Shayal, art a king, and shalt the Blue King's people come into our garden, and carry off our guests unhindered, and thou alive? And she proceeded to provoke him, saying, It behoveth not that any transgress against us during thy lifetime. Answered he, O mother of me, this man slew the Blue King's son, who was a jinni, and Allah threw him into his hand. He is a jinni, and I am a jinni. How then shall I go to him and make war on him for the sake of a mortal? But she reminded him, Go to him and demand our guest of him, and if he be still alive, and the Blue King deliver him to thee, take him and return. But an he have slain him, take the king and all his children, and harem, and household, depending on him, then bring them to me alive, that I may cut their throats with my own hand, and lay in ruin his reign. Except thou go to him, and do my bidding, I will not acquit thee of my milk, and my rearing of thee shall be counted unlawful. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 778th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the grandmother of Badi'a Al-Jamal said to Shayal, Fare thee to the Blue King, and look after Sayf Al-Muluk. If he still be alive, come with him hither. But an he have slain him, take the king, and all his children, and harem, and the whole of his dependents and proteges, and bring them here alive, that I may cut their throats with my own hand, and ruin his realm. Except thou go to him, and do my bidding, I will not acquit thee of my milk, and my rearing of thee shall be accounted unlawful. Thereupon Shayal rose, and assembling his troops set out, in deference to his mother, desiring to content her and her friends, and in accordance with whatso had been foreordained from eternity, without beginning. Nor did they have leaving journey till they came to the land of the Blue King, who met them with his army, and gave them battle. The Blue King's host was put to the rout, and conquerors have taken him and all his sons, great and small. And grandees and officers bound and brought them before King Shayal, who sat to the captive. O Azrak, where is the mortal Sayf Al-Muluk, with whom was my guest? answered the Blue King. O Shael, thou art a Jinni, and I am a Jinni, and isn't on account of a mortal who slew my son that thou hast done this deed. Yea, the murderer of my son, the core of my liver, and the solace of my soul. How couldst thou work such work, and spill the blood of so many thousand Jinn? He replied, Leave this talk. Knowest thou not that a single mortal is better in Allah's sight than 1,000 Jinn? If he be alive, bring him to me, and I will set thee free, and all whom I have taken of thy sons and people. But an thou have slain him, I will slaughter thee and thy sons. Quoth the Malik al-Azraq, O king, is this man of more account with thee than my son? And quoth Shayal, Verily, thy son was an evil-doer who kidnapped kings' daughters and shut them up in the ruined well and the high-builded castle of Japhet, son of Noah, and entreated them lewdly. Then said the Blue King, He is with me, but make thou peace between us. So he delivered the prince to Shayal, who made peace between him and the Blue King, and Al-Azraq gave him a bond of absolution for the death of his son. Then Shayal conferred robes of honor on them, and entertained the Blue King and his troops hospitably for 3 days, after which he took Sayf Al-Muluk and carried him back to the old queen, his own mother, who rejoiced in him and exceeding joy. And Shayal marveled at the beauty of the prince, and his loveliness and perfection. Then the prince related to him his story from beginning to end, especially what did befell him with Badi'a Al-Jamal. And Shayal said, O my mother, since 'tis thy pleasure that this should be, I hear and I obey all that to command it pleaseth thee. Wherefore do thou take him and bear him to Serendib, and there celebrate his wedding, and marry him to her in all state. For he is a goodly youth, and hath endured horrors for her sake. So she and her maiden set out with Sayf Al-Muluk for Serendib, and entering the garden belonging to the queen of Hind, foregathered with Dulat Khatan and Badia Al-Jamal. Then the lovers met, and the old queen acquainted the 2 princesses with all that had passed between Sayf Al-Muluk and the Blue King, and how the prince had been near-handed to the captive's death, but in repetition is no fruition. Then King Taj al-Muluk, father of Dulat Khatan, assembled the lords of his land and drew up the contract of marriage between Sayf Al-Muluk and Badia Al-Jamal. And he conferred costly robes of honor and gave banquets to the lieges. And then Sayf Al-Muluk rose, and kissing ground before the king, said to him, O king, pardon. I would fain ask of thee somewhat, but I fear lest thou refuse it to be my disappointment. Taj al-Muluk replied, By Allah, thou that soughtest my soul of me, I would not refuse it to thee, after all the kindness thou hast done me. Quoth Sayf Al-Muluk, I wish thee to marry the Princess Dulat Khatan to my brother Saeed, and we will both be thy pages. I hear and I obey, answered Taj al-Muluk, and assembling his grandees a second time, he let them draw up the contract of marriage between his daughter and Saeed. After which they scattered gold and silver, and the king bade decorate the city. So they held high festival, and Sayf Al-Muluk went in to Badia Al-Jamal, and Saeed went in unto Dulat Khatan on the same night. Moreover, Sayf Al-Muluk abode 40 days with Badia Al-Jamal, at the end of which he said to him, O king's son, say me, is there left in thy heart any regret for aught? And he replied, Allah forfend. I have accomplished my quest, and there abideth no regret in my heart at all. But I would fain meet my father and my mother in the land of Egypt, and see if they continue in welfare or not. So she commanded a company of her slaves to convey them to Egypt, and they carried them to Cairo, where Sayf Al-Muluk and Saeed foregathered with their parents, and abode with them a week, after which they took leave of them, and returned to Serendib city. And from this time forwards, whenever they longed for their folk, they used to go to them and return. Then Sayf Al-Muluk and Badia Al-Jamal abode in all solace of life and its joyance, as did Saeed and Dulat Khatan, till there came to them the destroyer of delights and the severer of societies, and they all died good Moslems. So glory be to the living one who dieth not, who createth all creatures, and decreeth to them death, and who is the first without beginning, and the last without end. This is all that hath come down to us of the story of Sayf Al-Muluk and Badi'a Al-Jamal. And Allah alone wotteth the truth, but not excellent than this, the tale of the history of Hassan of Bassorah. There was once, of days of yore, and in ages and times long gone before, a merchant who dwelt in the land of Bassorah, and who owned 2 sons and wealth galore. But in due time Allah, the all-hearing, the all-knowing, decreed that he should be admitted to the mercy of the Most High. So he died, and his 2 sons laid him out and buried him, after which they divided his gardens and estates equally between them, and of his portions each one opened a shop. Presently the elder son, Hassan hight, a youth of passing beauty and loveliness, symmetry and perfect grace, betook himself to the company of lewd folk, women and low men, frolicking with them in gardens, and feasting with them with meat and wine for months together, and occupying himself not with his business like as his father had done, for that he exulted in the abundance of his good. After some time he had wasted all his ready money, so he sold all his father's lands and houses, and played the wastrel until there remained in his hand nothing, neither little nor mutual, nor was one of his comrades left who knew him. He abode thus and hungered, he and his widowed mother, 3 days. And on the 4th day, as he walked along unknowing whither to wend, there met him a man of his father's friends, who questioned him of his case. He told him what had befallen him, and said, O my son, I have a brother who is a goldsmith, and thou shalt be with him and learn his craft, and become skilled therein. Hassan consented, and accompanied him to his brother, to whom he commended him, saying, In very sooth, this is my son. Do thou teach him for my sake. So Hassan abode with the goldsmith, and busied himself with the craft. And Allah opened to him the door of gain, and in due course he set up shop for himself. One day he sat at his booth in the bazaar, and there came up to him a Jami, a foreigner, a Persian, with a great white beard and a white turban on his head, having the semblance of a merchant, who, after saluting him, looked at his handiwork and examined it. It pleased him, and he shook his head, saying, By Allah, thou art a cunning goldsmith. What may be thy name? Hassan, replied the other shortly. The Persian continued to look at his wares, whilst Hassan read in an old book. He hent in hand, and the folks were taken up with his beauty and loveliness and symmetry and perfect grace, till the hour of mid-afternoon prayer, when the shop became clear of people, and the Persian accosted the young man, saying, O my son, thou art a comely youth. What book is that? Thou hast no sire, and I have no son, and I know an art than which is goodlier in all this world. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 779th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Persian accosted the young man, saying, O my son, thou art a comely youth. Thou hast no sire, and I have no son, and I know an art than which there is no goodlier in the world. Many have sought of me instruction therein, but I consented not to instruct any of them in it. Yet hath my soul consented that I teach it to thee, for thy love hath gotten hold of my heart, and I will make thee my son, and set up between thee and poverty a barrier. So shalt thou be acquit of this handicraft, and toil no more with hammer and anvil, charcoal and fire. Hassan asked, O my lord, and when wilt thou teach me this? And the Persian answered, Tomorrow, inshallah, I will come to thee betimes, and make thee in thy presence 5 gold of this copper. Whereupon Hassan rejoiced, and sat talking with the Persian till nightfall, when he took leave of him, and going in to his mother, saluted her with a salam, and ate with her. But he was dazed, without memory or reason of that the stranger's words had gotten hold upon his heart. So she questioned him, and he told her what had passed between him and the Persian, which when she heard, her heart fluttered, and she strained him to her bosom, saying, O my son, beware of hearkening to the tale of the folk, and especially of the Persians, and obey them in naught, for they are sharpers and tricksters, who profess the art of alchemy, and swindle people, and take their money, and devour it in vain. Replied Hassan, O my mother, we are paupers, and have nothing he may covet, that he would put a cheat on us. Indeed, this Persian is a right worthy sheikh, and the signs of virtue are manifest on him. Allah hath inclined his heart to me, and he hath adopted me to son. She was silent in her chagrin, and he passed the night without sleep, his heart being full of what the Persian had said to him, nor did slumber visit him for the excess of his joy therein. But when morning morrowed, he rose, and taking the keys, opened the shop, whereupon, behold, the Persian accosted him. Hassan stood up to him, and would have kissed his hands, but he forbade him from this, and suffered it not, saying, O Hassan, set on the crucible, and apply the bellows. So he did as the stranger bade him, and lighted the charcoal. Then said the Persian, O my son, hast thou any copper? And he replied, I have a broken platter. So he bade him work the shears, and cut it into bittocks, and cast it into the crucible, and blow up the fire with the bellows, till the copper became liquid. When he put hand to turban, and took therefrom a folded paper, and opening it, sprinkled thereon into the pot about a half a drachm of somewhat like yellow coal or eye powder. Then he bade Hassan blow upon it with the bellows, and he did so, and the contents of the crucible became a lump of gold. When the youth saw this, he was stupefied at his wits' end for the joy he felt, and taking the ingot from the crucible, handled it, and tried it with a file, and found it pure gold of the finest quality. Whereupon his reason fled, and he was dazed with the excess of delight, and bent over the Persian's hands to kiss it. But he forbade him, saying, Art thou married? And when the youth replied, No, he said, Carry this ingot to the market, and sell it, and take the price in haste, and speak not. So Hassan went down into the market, and gave the bar to the broker, who took it, and rubbed it upon the touchstone, and found it pure gold. So they opened the biddings at 10,000 dirhams, and the merchants against him one another up to 15,000 dirhams, at which price he sold it. And taking the money went home, and told his mother all that had passed, saying, O my mother, I have learnt this art and mystery. But she laughed at him, saying, There is no majesty, and there is no might, save in Allah, the glorious, the great. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease the telling of this tale, till it be morrow.